Hi everyone. The theme for this week is putting your leadership development plan into action. So here in Module 8, we explored several strategies for modeling leadership, and we discussed actions that we would take in developing leaders of the future. One of your resources that you read this week was called Compass, Your Guide to Leadership Development, and in that text, the authors presented several different competencies to develop leadership capacity in others, many of which are closely related or even inspired by the exemplary practices mentioned in Kouzes and Posner's The Leadership Challenge. I found that most of these strategies were practical and easy to implement, and that they could all make a big difference no matter what type of organization one is a part of. A few of them I found even intriguing, such as the one which is probably one of my favorites, called boundary spanning, which is the ability to form collaborative networks across different spheres of people. You know, it seems that boundary spanning can serve a lot of purposes, especially in understanding multiple points of view on a subject. Another strategy that I appreciated was one called tolerating ambiguity, which I think is a nod to the idea of adaptive approaches to leadership, which adaptive leadership, as you recall, it's championed by longtime leadership researcher Ron Heifetz. Adaptive leadership has been a long favorite of mine because it forces leaders not just to respond to the challenges, but to go beyond those challenges that are on the surface. So these simple or surface responses in the adaptive leadership framework are what are known as technical solutions, whereas adaptive solutions require new ways of thinking about the problem and thinking about new information. Adaptive leadership requires thinking deeply about things and seeing the world in new ways. With so much more complexity today around political, social, and environmental issues, it seems that adaptive leadership approaches, they're becoming more valued. So we also reflected upon the short document called Develop Others, which served as a template for self-reflection for us as leaders. I like to think of this document as a leadership mirror, if you will, with each principle being an honest question about our own competencies and dispositions of leadership. All of these resources in many ways are common sense practices, and all of us at some point or another can say, of course that makes sense. But the most poignant principle this week has been the notion that despite all this good research and all the practical suggestions, common sense does not mean common practice. So therefore, it's the leader's job, your job, to bridge those two ideas together. All right, so next week we'll delve into some of the barriers in implementing an action plan, and more broadly, how can we as leaders navigate those things, ideas, and many times those people who have a divergent view of things from yourself. One way to look at this next module is that it's an extension of this current module. So in other words, if this week we talked about our plans, then next week we'll talk about how those plans are implemented. Simply put, we just talked about the conceptual or the ideal, but we know at some point it must be put into action, or what I call the real. The real includes considering the different things we have to think about as we get there. So it's not too early to start thinking about your last paper, which will be due at the end of class in Module 10. So as we did in previous modules when a paper is due, I have a plan to have a video for you with tips and insights and cover any last things we need to do or you need to do before the class ends. All right, well, that's all for now, and as you have throughout this class, continue to wrap up anything you need to do over the weekend, and I'll see all of you online.